Lisa, I'm so excited to have you here because you have come into my world, and I love that you've come into my world. And we are going to be on. You're doing a summit coming up, the Freedom Kitchen Summit, and I'm going to be joining you there as a speaker. Super excited about that. But you have been promoting this Biology of Trauma Summit, and you have a very special reason for that. And I wanted you to share, like, what has motivated you so much to share this with all of your people, even your friends, your family, your people. What's been the reason for you?
Well, biology of trauma really struck a chord with me because you got it. You got me. When I heard your story and about your son, I felt understood or heard because I was adopted. And a lot of people want to tell adoptees how lucky they are. And I heard my whole life, and I am lucky. I am lucky to have the family I have. But to be told as a child, you're so lucky, you're so lucky, you should know how lucky you are, overlooks the grief. And because of the separation at birth, which I didn't understand until much later in a lot of work, understanding birth bond and the separation and the trauma that can happen, I can at least say that initially no one allowed me to grieve. And by not being able to grieve the loss of my first parents, it's hard to feel lucky for your second parents.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that this has been just another way in which people minimize trauma. They minimize the impact of life experiences on people, and they can say some very hurtful things, and it almost like re-traumatizes you because now you now you feel ashamed about, why don't I feel lucky, right? And so whenever we go into that shame place, like, that's really the biology of trauma that we're talking about on the summit. And you've even made some connections with your life in terms of the therapy that you've been through, the process that you've been through, different family members even, and you've now got this lens that you can see trauma patterns.
Yes. Yes. It was a long journey for me, and I did traditional therapy and a number of different energy healing modalities. So I went down the path of learning Sedona method and EFT and a lot of the tools that you're going to talk about, because it is layers. And once we start to get through those layers and we become conscious and mindful, some of that may be my yoga teacher training. So that all opened up for me, though, after going through therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and acknowledging that there was a trauma and that it was okay that that was traumatic. You know, for a long time, I was told that to tout my adoption issues was a betrayal or hurtful to my parents. This isn't about being hurtful to anyone else. It was about acknowledging the trauma that had happened within me and then unwinding or untangling those layers. And a lot of that is survival skills. And then, you know, we build stories around, which then just adds another layer of trauma, but we build layers and layers of survival mechanisms.
Mm-hmm. And in your work, even as the yoga head teacher, you have noticed this effect on the breath, right?
Yes.
And you've noticed that trauma will take your breath away. It will make you catch your breath, and you'll notice shallow breathing. And that is something that we talk a lot about in the summit, because that's a big aspect of the biology of trauma, going into that freeze response, and it shuts down your breath. And you've seen a lot of that.
Yes, it's almost interesting, the cause and effect, because that becomes like a chicken and an egg scenario. Because
Yes.
once you've caught your breath, and I tell people, you don't think you've had a trauma, they, oh, I've never had anything traumatic. Well, I wasn't locked in a closet or, you know, deprived of food or beaten. The things that we would classify as a trauma, I didn't have those things either. So a lot of us will minimize our own trauma. But I say, if you've ever went, that in that moment, that was a trauma. And what your work is now showing us is that it changed the biology. And so we have to become aware that we've all had traumas. How is that trauma playing out in our life? Because that creates a pattern. Once we're breathing shallow, that leads to anxiety. So then we say, I have anxiety. I was diagnosed with anxiety. I was on Ativan. Then I was on Zoloft for post-traumatic stress disorder. I was on Wellbutrin. I did not realize that the shallow breathing was contributing to the anxiety. So I probably got the shallow breathing from the trauma and holding my breath, but then the shallow breathing perpetuated the anxiety.
And you've had such an amazing life journey. You were even in IT for a period of time, working on root cause analysis there in IT. Now you're working more with food because that's been a big part of your journey. And this is the same pattern that happens with food. Trauma causes these changes in the digestive system that makes it more sensitive to foods, makes it more sensitive in general, makes there be more inflammation. And then that very same inflammation and sensitivity is now going to add more fuel to these trauma patterns and make your overall system much more reactive, much more sensitive, much more vulnerable to future stressors that won't just be a stress, probably will actually overwhelm your system because of all the changes that have happened.
Well, that brings tears to my eyes because I've had chronic digestive disorders my whole life. And so when I worked with a holistic practitioner finally, and we charted out when did these symptoms start, it was as far back as I could remember, like 5 years old. And the joke was that I could like roll my belly or I looked pregnant every time I ate. And so all the bloating, the gastrointestinal distress, and I have tons of food allergies to this day that I work on. And it did lead me down a path of using my IT training of root cause analysis. I had to figure out why the network went down at work, but no one would figure out why I had all these health issues. I was actually told the chronic pain at 26. At 24, I was already in braces for carpal tunnel. At 26, I was told I probably needed surgery for that. And for the chronic pain in my ankles, I should just take Advil. And I said every day. I have pain in my ankles every day. Yeah, take Advil every day. Well, at this age, I'd probably be in kidney failure if I would have started doing that. But no one linked together the gastrointestinal issues, the bloating, the triglycerides over 300 by age 18, the joint pain at 26, type 2 diabetes and fibromyalgia at 36. And that was when I finally said, I have to get to the root cause. And all of those were related to diet and lifestyle. And yes, trauma, which is harder to talk about. So I'm so glad that you're talking about that, because it is the experiences and our emotional state that also contribute to that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And they really can't be separated. And people have tried to separate them. They've tried to make trauma your psychology, and then there's your physical health, and that's medical. And being able to integrate them and be like, no, like this is the true root cause, right? And it does become the chicken and the egg because they feed off of each other and become this vicious cycle that it certainly, by the time one is having physical health symptoms and conditions, there's a lot to unravel there, right? And you've already been finding that out. It's not just one piece, and it's not just going to be one medication or one supplement. There's a lot to unravel there because it's been years in the making after going through some life trauma that has affected the biology.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The detox program that I ended up putting in place. So I walked away from that IT career and I bought a wellness spa, and then I had a cooking school as well. But what I've been teaching people is a process. And what I don't tell them is it's less about the diet and detox, and it's more about uncovering what's going on within them. And I use a lot of that yogic training and some of those energy healing tools, because the processes that you're teaching are imperative. We can use diet and lifestyle as part of that, but we have to be uncovering what's going on inside of us.
Exactly. Lisa, thank you. Love the work that you're doing. Super excited to be on your summit coming up. Yes. So if you could summarize why you have been so passionate about promoting this summit, what would you tell people?
The Biology of Trauma Summit is a must watch for everybody. If they aren't aware of any trauma in their life, know that we all experienced on some level a trauma last year. So the timing of this is, impeccable, but this is necessary for everyone. I would love for people to get to the root cause of anything that they have going on in their life and just the awareness of it. So yes, I think everyone should be watching the Biology of Trauma. Thank you so much for doing this work.
You are very welcome. It's been a labor of love, and it's really been piecing together like what are all the different things that I needed to have for my own personal journey? Because this is a very personal thing for me. It's not something that I just learned out of a textbook and, oh, let me share you what I learned. This has been my life, right? Since I adopted my son and then had my own health crash, this has been my life. So I'm very excited now to be able to be in the place where I can share this free resource with people, and really appreciate you sharing your story with us today.
Thank you.